How are you, Bruce?
I'm doing great, Rich. Good to be on with you.
Okay, so why did the committee do what they did?
It's a great question. It's hard to get a straight answer. My best rationale, because they've spent so much time talking about how important it is to have quality wins and how important it is to win conference championships. Well, Alabama didn't do either. But also, Alabama didn't lose by 30-plus points to an unranked Iowa team after they had already lost to Oklahoma. So, my hunch on this is there's some people in the committee, even if they did subconsciously look and go, well, we got Clemson sitting there at the number 1 seed, and Alabama has given them good games the last 2 years. They've been great games. Alabama won 1, lost 1. And last year we saw this matchup, and Clemson just destroyed Ohio State and J.T. Barrett. And I think they have more confidence in Alabama right now, even though they didn't win a conference championship. And really, Ohio State probably has 3 good wins that are better than Alabama's best win, which is over a 9-3 LSU team.
So what is Big Ten Commissioner Jim Delaney saying today? What's he thinking, you think?
What's he thinking? I wouldn't be surprised if this is the kind of thing that some people in that office going, hey, maybe we should move this thing to 8 teams, because this is the second year in a row their conference champ has been snubbed. And I think that's tough. It's like also obviously the Pac-12 has got left out. And so I think that they say, well, do we do a five teams, all Power 5 conferences champs get in, and maybe we give one group of 5 team a spot and 2 at-larges? There'll obviously be more games and more money, but there'd be a challenge logistically to do that. So I'm curious to see if this thing gets any traction and it builds from there, if it's just frustration in the moment, or if it's actually something that takes on a lot more weight to it.
So who makes that decision? How does that get going? Somebody calls up John Skipper at ESPN, or John Skipper calls up somebody at the NCAA, or this is brought up at some president's conference, wherever that happens? How does this work, Bruce?
Well, I think if sometimes this is going to happen, I think it's going to be driven either by the SEC commissioner and the SEC brass, or it's going to be driven by Jim Delaney and Big Ten folks. Obviously, the SEC is not going to be ticked off because they got 2 in this year. So it's a question of what is the Big Ten? Does Jim Delaney and the Big Ten look at this and go, we got to fix this system? This is too flawed. You're always going to have somebody disappointed, but this is something that we think is something that needs to be rectified, because they always tweak these things, but this would be obviously a major fix, not just a tweak.
So do you think they got it right, Bruce?
I would have, just based on the logic that they have talked about, I would have thought it would have been Ohio State, just because they talk a lot about conference championships mattering and this quality wins thing. If you had asked me this dynamic 4 years ago, I would have thought Alabama would have been higher up because they only have 1 loss. But they don't. They kind of downplay to some degree how much losses matter compared to quality wins in conference championships.
Let's be honest, Bruce. I mean, they'll do that for a few weeks, but when it all comes down to it, putting brass to tax to brass here, they gotta put 2 games together that the country wants to see or and watch, and it all came down to an eye test and a smell test. Does it look like a championship team or not? And they saw Ohio State against Wisconsin, and they saw Alabama against Auburn in the Iron Bowl, and they sat back, and they're like, okay, which game do we want to run back? The national championship game in the last 2 years, the game there was a blowout, shutout loss. I think that's the end of it, Bruce, right?
I think
that's it.
Too, and I do wonder if Ohio State wins that game Saturday night 35-10 as opposed to down to the wire. I think you might have gotten a different result, but Ohio State didn't look dominant. They didn't look dominant against your alma mater, Michigan, either. Now, they looked dominant in the game we had a couple of weeks before that against Michigan State, but when you had a couple of, one blowout loss and another one, quite honestly, where Oklahoma was clearly the better team, and it was in Columbus, I don't think you have anyone to blame but yourself if you're at Ohio State right now.
Okay, a few minutes left to have with you, Bruce. Let's talk coaching searches. What can you tell me that's happening at Tennessee and now at Florida State?
The Tennessee things have gotten just so chaotic in the last week with the craziness around the Greg Schiano hire, where they hired him and then they, both sides agreed to it, and then they pulled back because there was a fan revolt, and then it went off the rails from there. With Jimbo, are they going to go for Mike Gundy? Is he really going to take it? No, of course he's not. He turns it down, then like one guy after another. Then they get to Mike Leach. The AD's all set to hire him. Mike Leach is on board, and then they blow up the deal because there's a power play behind the scenes. Phil Fulmer, who had always wanted to be the AD, he's now the AD. I don't think he's going to want to hire Mike Leach. From talking to people around, the Tennessee brass, one of the things I'd heard today, and I've heard it a couple of times this weekend, was that don't be surprised if Phil Fulmer gives a long, hard look to Chad Morris, the head coach at SMU, or Brent Venables, who's the defensive coordinator at Clemson. Two guys that Fulmer really trusts and leans on are big believers in both of those guys from their Clemson days. Obviously, Venables is still there, so there's that. As far as FSU, I do believe that Willie Taggart, who's at Oregon now, former USF coach, he is the prime target there. It was reported not that long ago, maybe an hour ago, that Willie Taggart was finalizing a deal to become the next head coach. I can tell you that is not accurate. It's nowhere near that far along. I have a good source on this who said they haven't even met as of yet. So now it wouldn't shock me if Willie Taggart left to take the FSU job. That's home for him, and he grew up a Florida State fan, and obviously Florida State's a great job. But keep in mind, he has probably a first-round talent at quarterback in Justin Herbert. They have really done a really good job building things up, and I'm sure Phil Knight likes the direction of it and would like to do whatever he can to try to keep Willie Taggart there.
Well, in terms of the Tennessee job, Ben McAdoo's available, Bruce. I bring that up completely facetiously to get to the David Shaw situation because there may be no situation at all. I started the show saying if I'm Tisch, I'm Mara, or any owner in the NFL, my first call is to David Shaw and saying, here's a check. What number do I write in it? You come be my guy. Do you think that's possible? Would David Shaw do it?
I think it's possible they'll reach out. I don't think he's ready to go yet. I mean, this comes with no direct, insight from David Shaw in the last month or whatever. I just think at some point he's take that move. I just don't think he's ready. He loves it at Stanford. He loves the environment he has there. It's just a matter of when does he do it. I mean, what year? I don't think he would leave right now. I really don't. But I think if you're the NFL, you got to call and ask.
And if I'm talking to a college football writer the first Monday in December and there's a New York City scenescape blaring behind him on the phone, that must be its Heisman time. Correct, Bruce? Is that what's going on?
Yes, that is right. It's Baker Mayfield time is what it is.
So who do you expect to hear tonight? What names do you expect to hear tonight for the announcement?
We got actually the Hall of Fame event is here tomorrow, but
okay.
The Heisman's this weekend. I would expect it to be Baker Mayfield in a runaway. He may have the biggest margin of victory that anyone's ever had in this award. It's not even close at this point.
So, but who are going to be the who are at least going to be people getting the invitation to New York? Do we know, Bruce?
I would think it would be Bryce Love and either Lamar Jackson and or Rashad Penny from San Diego State. I guess there's a chance that you could have Saquon Barkley from Penn State in there as well. But I think really in this case, there's two guys who are on the radar, and one guy so far in front, that's Baker. The other guy would be Bryce Love.
Ask him the poll question before we go out the door here, Christopher.
Bruce, what's the best bowl game, the one you're most interested in, the Sugar Bowl, the Rose Bowl, or the Cotton Bowl?
Which one are you going to watch more than, if you can only watch one, which one would you watch?
Georgia has a great linebacker named Roquan Smith. He's fantastic. I can't wait to see him against the quarterback at Oklahoma because that guy is playing out of his mind. I'm here with a bunch of college coaches who are also in New York. Two guys last night told me Baker Mayfield is the best college quarterback they've ever seen, the way he's playing right now.
Bruce, take care of yourself. Look both ways before crossing the street, but you already knew that.
Yes, sir.
You got it. That's Bruce Feldman.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.